Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar on solar curtailment in Greece. My name is Franny Flinterman and I'm project manager at Solarplaza and in charge of organizing the Solarplaza Summit Greece happening on the 26th of September in Athens. For those of you who don't know Solarplaza yet, let me quickly introduce us to you. We are a global event organizer. We are established in 2004, so we are celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. And our mission is to positively impact the world by accelerating the sustainable energy transition. We are based in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, and we've hosted numerous events around the globe. And we have a network of over 60,000 PV professionals joining us at those events. So this webinar is part of the run-up to our Solarplaza Summit Greece, where we will gather over 150 industry players in Athens for a day full of learning and networking. So if you are interested in attending the event, please have a look at the program and at our amazing speakers on our event website. I'm also very excited to share with you a special discount of 20% as a thank you for participating in our webinar today. So please use this discount code when registering your ticket for our conference. Before we get started, I have 3 practical notes to share with you. First of all, you have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenters by typing your questions in the questions section of your control panel on your screen. You can also use this box for any technical issues you might encounter. Our staff is here to help you with that. And this webinar will be recorded. We will share the link to the recordings in the coming few days with you. So today, Stelios Psomas, policy advisor at Helleniq, is our moderator. So welcome, Stelios. Please turn on your camera. We are very excited and thankful that you are leading this webinar today. So let's not wait any longer and let's get started. So I wish you all a good webinar, and Stelios, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. I would like you to invite all of you on behalf of the Greek PV Association, Helleniq. And I'm really happy because today we have some distinguished speakers with us who will actually give us a first glance of what's happening in one of the hottest issues nowadays in Greece, but also, I guess, in most countries. That is the issue of curtailments. It seems even today, as we speak, this seems to be #1 news in the energy news here in Greece. So I guess that it will be really interesting for all of us. Just to give you a very, very brief introduction of our speakers, we have 3 speakers with us today. Professor Pandelis Biskas, he is a professor at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki and an electricity markets expert who's done a lot of work during the last many years regarding simulation of wholesale markets. Actually, Helleniq has cooperated with Pandelis almost or even more than 10 years ago for some studies. Then we will have Stefanos Mavropoulos, who's a senior manager at Baringa, and he's responsible for the areas of Greece and Cyprus. And we'll finish with the president of Helleniq and also chief operating officer for Helleniq Energy, Dr. Sotiris Kapellos. As we finish with the presentations, we will leave some time for your questions. So please, as Franny has explained, use the questions section there in case you have any question at all, so that we'll give you the time to answer these questions. But before we start with the first presentation, we would like to have a small poll, let's say, regarding how do you see the issue of curtailments developing in the coming years. So if we could please have the questions for the poll. Looking at year 2030, which is not far from here, what level of curtailments do you expect? Less than 5%, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, more than 20, whatever. You give us your first feeling, and I guess that our speakers will try to give a more, let's say, educated guess on these curtailments during this webinar. So let's give it a few seconds to see what's happening and get your feeling. Okay, 37% of you have answered to these questions. And as far as I can see, the vast majority expects almost 48% expects curtailments to reach a level of 10 to 15% of the overall production of a PV power station. And almost a quarter sees more than 20%. That is, the feeling I get is that you consider curtailment a very serious issue that should not be left like that. So without further ado, I would like to ask my friend Pandelis Biskas. You can see his CV, it's an impressive CV, and I guess that everybody in the Greek electricity market knows Pandelis, so we're very happy to have him. And he will present us his latest modeling results on what to expect on curtailments in Greece. Pandelis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stelios. I would like to thank the organizer for this kind invitation and the opportunity to discuss these very important issues. So let's proceed with our presentation. The title of the presentation is Solar Curtailments in Greece and the way forward to minimize the consequences of these curtailments. As we know already, we have several renewable energy sources connected to the system, 12.5 gigawatt, almost 12.5 gigawatt in the interconnected system. We have also connection terms to another 15 to 16 gigawatt of renewables, which were provided by AGNE and the DE in the last 2.5 years. We have also a specific environment for farmers and industries in order to have, let's say, a hedging tool for their consumption, for their electricity consumption, which will connect another 2 gigawatt of renewables, mainly PV stations, to the system. We also expect another 3 to 4 gigawatt of renewables to get connected in the next 5 years based on the applications that have been submitted to the transmission system operator and distribution system operator where there is electrical space. We have another 2 gigawatt of reserved capacity for electrical space for offshore wind parks based on the governmental decision. And we expect another 1.5 gigawatt of PV station we expect 1.5 gigawatt of PV stations to connect in the following months, and another 2 to 3 gigawatt to be connected until December 2025, which means that we will have a significant penetration in the next 15 months, where in this case we will not have any storage facility until the end of 2025, as it seems. For the batteries, we have the target of the National Energy and Climate Plan, which is the current one is 3.1 gigawatt. We have heard some rumors that this will be increased to 4 gigawatt, but this is to be seen in the next update of this plan. What we know is that there will be given 1.3 gigawatt of connection terms to batteries through these RRF auctions. The two have already The first two have already taken place, and the third one is expected probably in September. And we expect another 2 gigawatt based on publications of batteries, standalone or behind-the-meter batteries, to be provided connection terms to a new mechanism that we don't know yet the details. Of course, there is also a target for hydro pumping stations. Currently 100 megawatt already operating in the reservoirs of Sphikia and Thesavros. We have funding secured for another 680 megawatt, which are under construction, and the funding is possible for another 100 to 200 megawatt to be constructed in the next 3 years or more. The funding and construction of even more hydro pumping stations is not secured for other pumping stations, so their construction is questionable in case they don't have Capex or OPEX or both of them grants from the state. So we expect that the hydro pumping stations may lack in 2030 as compared to their target that is in the National Energy and Climate Plan. What we have seen in the last 7 months is severe curtailments, which started from March and emerged even higher in April and May. This situation got slightly better in May and June, but the curtailments have not been zeroized. They have been significantly decreased, but even in some Sunday or Saturday days of the last months, May, June, and July, we have some curtailments. Indicatively, in the 7th of July, we had rest curtailments up to 2 gigawatt, which was a summer day. What we expect for the next months is a severe increase in curtailments in September, October, and November, since new renewables are increasingly penetrating the grid in these last months, and there is no new storage facility that is coming in operation. So we expect that in these 3 months of autumn 2024, we will reach 6 gigawatt of curtailments on instantaneously, and we expect this rest curtailments to reach 8 gigawatt in October-November 2025, since even at that stage we will not have any more storage to take to withdraw the energy, the excess energy of the rest. What we expect for the year 2030, a typical day of April, is to have an extreme excess of renewable energy at noon hours, reaching even 10 gigawatt, with the battery target of the National Energy and Climate Plan of 3.1 gigawatt. So in that case, we will need at least 3.8 gigawatt of additional storage capacity in order, charging and discharging capacity, in order to withdraw the energy that is exceeding. Otherwise, we will have curtailments, and this is the let's say, details of our analysis, of our simulation for 2030, which show that we will have expected curtailments at the level of 19.7%. If you can see the energy balance, you will see that we will have, let's say, modest injection from gas units, about 13 terawatt hours. The large hydros with the pumping operation will have a penetration of about 5 to 6 terawatt hours. We will have net exports to neighboring countries at the level of 4 terawatt hours, and the total injection, the batteries charge and discharge will reach a level of 2.5 terawatt hours, 2.9 for charge and 2.5 for discharge, with a system load of 59.5 terawatt hours for this year, for 2030, which is also the projection of ADMIE, the transmission system operator, for this year. Our projections show that these curtailments shall reach a level of more or less 20%. In a sensitivity analysis that we have performed for additional 500 megawatt of new batteries inserted to the system, we can avoid about 300 to 590 megawatt hours of RES curtailments for each 500 megawatt of new batteries that are inserted in the system. So this shows that the way forward, since interconnections are a long-term and difficult to implement projects, and also hydro pumping projects are also difficult to implement and timely for their construction. They require many years for development and construction. It seems that the batteries are let's say, the highest, the better opportunity we have to avoid RES curtailments in the next few years. Now, if we take an hourly analysis of our results, simulation results, we will see that the RES curtailments in the left upper corner have a shape, a profile, an hourly profile during the year that is more or less at the same shape of the bell injection of the photovoltaics. So on average, we expect very low low curtailments at hours 1 to 7 and 18 to 24, whereas the major percentage of the curtailments will take place in hours 9 to 17, which is the hours of the PV injection. If we see the upper right figure, we can see that the RES curtailments in megawatt hours are significant in the noon hours, since in this figure we can see what is projected, what is forecasted based on the penetration of the renewables that we have in 2030, and what will be actually injected in the system based on the fact that the power balance should remain. And in percentage, in the lower left corner, we can see the RES curtailments in a percentage level. So we also see that the higher percentage of curtailments is in noon hours. Additionally, if we focus on PVs only, we have exactly the same picture. So the highest, the curtailment are higher during the noon hours, extremely during the hours 10 to 15. And we see also the RES curtailments on percentage level at the right upper corner. Conclusions based on this analysis and the figures that we have provided, we have several options. We have actually two options in political level. The first option is to define a specific base penetration, 4 gigawatt, 3.1 or something at that level for year 2030 by the government, which means that we will have severe RES curtailments and probably some sense of dissatisfaction from the renewable producers, and we will have also an increased cost for the end customer, end consumer. The second option is to release the process of providing connection terms to merchant batteries for interested investors, so that we do not have any capacity limits in the charging or discharging and discharging capacity, so that the interested parties invest in batteries to protect their investments also in the renewable activity. And in that case, we will have a significantly lower risk curtailment level at the level of 2 to 4%. We will have increased BESS penetration at the level of 7.5 gigawatt and enhanced system security for the power system, since the batteries can provide all reserves, and even they can provide FFR, fast frequency reserve, which is in milliseconds of frequency deviation. This is all from me, Stelios. So the last bullets of my presentation is that in order to proceed with this, let's say, least cost and enhanced security option, we have to leave the market to operate in full competition, to not leave any oligopolies in any segment of the market, including the balancing market, of course, to withdraw any capacity restrictions for investors who wish to play merchant in their batteries, and to decrease as much as possible the cost for the end consumers. This is all from me. Thank you for your attention. Stelios.
Okay, thank you, Pandelis. I think you managed in almost 10 minutes to give us a general idea of what to expect in the coming 5 to 6 years. We will continue with Stefanos Mavropoulos. Stefanos Mavropoulos is a senior manager at Baringa's energy and resources sector. Baringa is one of the global leaders in offering services regarding market prospects and analyzing markets. And I will ask Stefanos to proceed. I think that he will give us a picture which is, let's say, supplementary to what Pandelis has said so far, in the sense that he will be describing also what the regulations say about curtailments and what should investors expect about that. Stefanos, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stelios, and thank you very much for Solarplaza to give me the opportunity to speak to this webinar. So renewable energy curtailment has emerged as one of the biggest challenges for the renewable sector in Greece and in general in the world. There are three main types for renewable energy curtailment. First of all, we have market curtailment, otherwise known as economic curtailment. This happens when inflexible generation, such as wind, solar, nuclear, CHP, hydro run-of-river, exceeds demand in the market for any hour in the market. When that happens, part of that inflexible generation must be curtailed, so the supply can meet the demand exactly in that hour. Usually in these hours, prices tend to be very low, even zero and negative. Looking at the future, the main risks that can drive more market curtailment is around the volume of inflexible sources relative to the volume of flexible sources, such as batteries or thermal generators. In Greece specifically, market curtailment and other types of curtailment affect mostly spring and autumn, and market curtailment has appeared the last couple of years and will increase over time as more renewable penetration comes to the system. The second type of curtailment is system curtailment. This is due to power system operational limitations. So it's due to actions taken to ensure system stability, such as reserves, inertia, etc., etc. Looking at the future, the main risk drivers depend on pace of technology uptake, the future network reinforcements, and changing operating standards. The third type of curtailment is grid curtailment. This happens due to local network limitations. So, for example, we have renewable assets that has high renewable generation in a particular hour, and you have, let's say, at the same hour, high demand in the system, but there is not enough grid to take that power from the renewable asset to the demand. When that happens, then that part of that energy must be curtailed for network reasons. The future outlook of that depends on local supply-demand balance and local network reinforcement. In Greece, two things to add specific to Greece. One is that there are also static grid connection limitations that apply from the start of the projects, and we're going to see a little bit more about that later, and they have to be capped at 5% of annual volumes maximum. And also there are dynamic curtailments, which are applied differently hour to hour and day by day, depending on the system and network needs. So we just said that curtailment affects mostly autumn and spring. Let's see why is that. On the chart on the left, we can see at the top line, it's a black continuous line, we can see the loads in the system, the monthly average hourly loads from January 23 all the way to today. And in the line just before that light blue line, you can see the loads, but net of renewable generation in every month in Greece. Renewable generation varies throughout the year. So solar, for example, generates more during the summer and less during the winter. Wind generates more during the winter. So overall renewable generation in Greece generates slightly more during the summer and broadly at similar levels throughout the rest of the year. Demand, however, varies much more significantly. So demand tends to be much higher during the summer and also relatively high during the winter and much lower during autumn and spring. When we remove renewable generation from demand, then we can see, as we can see from the bottom line, that the demand is much lower during the spring and autumn months. As an example, in April 24, the average net demand after renewables was approximately 2 gigawatts in Greece, while, for example, just now in July is over 4 gigawatts. So you see there is a huge difference in terms of average monthly load after renewables are removed in autumn and spring. Moving on to the chart on the right, we can see that actually this is even more pronounced when we look at the hourly shape. And this is one of the worst days for curtailment that happened in Greece in 28th of April this year. We can see again with a black line the load, the hourly load in that day. Then we can see with the green continuous line what was the renewable energy available to the system. And the dust line, the green dust line, is actually what was produced in that day. And we can see that the actual production was lower than the load. So already we can see a lot of market curtailment, and then we can also see system curtailment. So the renewables has to be lower than the load because some thermal generation must be online for system stability reasons. The other insight from here is that when that happens, when we see the most curtailment, which is obviously the midday hours, the hours where you have very high solar generation, power price tends to be very low. Actually, it was zero, below zero, and slightly above zero for most of that duration of the event. That's very important to keep in mind. So let's move to the grid connection limit, which is very specific to Greece. So the regulation in Greece states that any new project will actually get a limited grid connection agreement compared to installed capacity. For solar, the way that it works is that you usually get a reconnection of 72% of your installed capacity. That means that you have to curtail all your excess energy above that level, and you know that from the start of the project. With the scenario of the 72% peak limitation, the approximate impact on annual production is between 1 and 1.5%, but obviously varies asset by asset and varies year on year. That impact on annual production does not translate one-to-one in impact on revenues. The impact on revenues actually is slightly lower than that. So in the near term, for example, if the asset had 1.5% annual production impact on generation, the impact on revenue will be 1.2 or 1.3%. It will be lower than that. And in the very long term, let's say beyond 2030 and 35, the impact on revenues will be even lower than that. And the reason is that during those hours that the curtailment happens, prices tend to be lower than average. Therefore, even though you do lose energy, the impact on revenues is lower. However, there has been discussion for reducing the limitation, making more stricter at even 50% of the peak. That will have huge consequences for solar because from 1 or 2% of curtailment, we may reach levels almost 10 times above that. So that's a much, much higher. And the reason for that is that the energy between 50 and 72% is much more than 72% and above, as we see from the graph on the left. The impact on revenues will be much, much greater. And actually, these hours tend to have still lower price than average, but much higher than the 72% and above. So the impact on revenues will be higher, but again, it will reduce over time beyond 2030 and 35 as more solar penetrates the system. In terms of wind, as we see on the right, it actually operates in a different way. Specifically, there is a varied limitation on grid connection. So even though solar, there is a flat 72% limitation, for wind, it varies. Over nighttime, there is no limitation at all because there is not much solar generation and renewable generation in general. But during the midday, when solar also peaks, there is a 65% limitation. And during the solstice, there is an 80% limitation for wind as well. So wind is also impacted from that. The impact on wind massively varies by location and depending on whether the particular wind asset generates a load during midday. So finally, some key questions and uncertainties. First of all, will the grid connection limitations become strict over time? We saw that actually there's a proposal to reduce it to 50%, other proposal as 55% or 60%. So we think that probably, yes, they will become stricter over time. And if we were to go with a very extreme scenario of 50% at peak, it's very likely that a lot of the solar assets will have to be co-located with batteries so that they are viable economically. Otherwise, the level of curtailment could be prohibitive for many of these projects. Second, how do we ensure fair share on curtailment impact in the absence of set point? As many of you know, at the moment, a lot of the smaller assets in the distribution network do not get too much curtailment, or they may not get any curtailment, while larger assets in the transmission grid many times get disproportionately affected by curtailment. So at the moment, we can say that there is a mechanism being discussed in which we'll see assets with very low levels of curtailment pay to reimburse assets with very high levels of curtailment. The second, however, we need to really be thinking about is how the differences in remuneration will be managed with this mechanism. So if an asset, for example, has PPA or merchant or CFDs, how that plays into the reimbursement. Obviously, when the set points come, then that will be less of a problem. Third, should there be a mechanism for compensation for curtailment, for example, system curtailment above a certain threshold? At the moment, we don't see any clear mechanism for compensation that has been announced. So in Greece, all these curtailments are actually not compensated. The fourth is, how can the investors have a better view of curtailment volumes ahead of investment? Now, what is very important to capture here is that is not only the volume of curtailment that is a problem, is also the difficulty to predict, particularly for specific assets that is a problem. So that actually has an impact potentially also on the cost of capital of these projects and the business case of these projects. So there is an increasing need to clarify rules and also to do more modeling in terms of system services requirements to give a better view of curtailment volumes for different assets. Finally, how can we reduce curtailment? And we saw a lot of proposals from previously the Professor Biskas. Some of the options are storage, both for energy balances and system stability. Second is demand shifting towards the midday hours, and we see initiatives on that already this year. Third is interconnection, even though a lot of these markets will also have similar problems, but it can help. Fourth is renewable geographical diversity, particularly helpful for wind, less so on solar. And finally, network reinforcement to alleviate any grid congestion issues that may arise. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Stefanos. Actually, I see a question here from one of the attendants. You already answered to his questions, so thank you for that, as if you knew what he would ask. And but before going to the Q&A section, I would like to ask my friend Sotiris, Dr. Sotiris Kapellos, COO of Helleniq Energy and also chair of Helleniq, to give his own experience. For those who don't know that, Helleniq Renewables owns the largest PV station at the moment in Greece, project of 204 megawatt in northern Greece in the area of Kozani, and is one of the projects that actually feel curtailments. It's a very hot issue for them. They are losing a lot of money at the moment. So we will have a very down on earth and realistic assessment of what curtailments may mean to a big project. Sotiris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stelio. Good morning to everybody. What I'm going to present is a few slides. What's the market? It has been shown by Professor Biskas, but it's in a different perspective that is being seen. This is the development of the evolution of the Greek PV market as we see it from 2010 till last year. The orange bars is the cumulative installed power, which is it has reached 7.1 gigawatt, and the blue bars is the annual installations. So last year it was a record year of 1.6 gigawatt that has been installed in Greece, and we expect this to become bigger this year. I will show you the numbers in the next slide. So something that it has been seen in other markets which are more mature than the Greek market is that the market risks, apart from the regulatory license risk that has been till a few years ago in Greece and in all our markets, now the additional risk is the market risks, routes to the market, the commercial PPAs, merchant, versus the feed-in tariffs, feed-in premiums that have been applied in the previous years. So the investor now has to be more careful and has a forecast for the prices of next year's price of natural gas, price of CO2. So it becomes more complex for investor to predict what the income will be in the next years. And the second risk that has arisen in the last years, especially in 2023, it's curtailment. That last year it was 2 to 3%, and we expect this to at least to double in 2024. So the market has become more competitive, and as the renewables become the installed power of renewables becomes higher, the risks become higher in both bullets, in the market risk and the competition in the market, and also in the curtailment area. So let's see what's the room for new projects till 2030. According to the National Energy and Climate Plan, the total installed power gigawatts that will have to be installed for RES is 28 gigawatt, and we have already last year 12.3 gigawatt, which means which is split to 7.1 gigawatt for solar and 5.2 gigawatt of wind. So we are at 12. We have been at 12.3 in the end of 2023, and we expect that this number will become 14.6 in the end of 2024. And this is split to 1.2 gigawatt of PV and almost 0.5 gigawatt of wind. So there will be another 2.3 gigawatts to be installed in 2024, and there will be a remaining 14.4 gigawatt to achieve the 2030 National Energy and Climate Plan, which have already been allocated by the TSO and the DSO to specific projects according to the ministerial decree that was issued in 2022. And there is little room for additional connection terms till 2030, especially for projects that they are not to be constructed. Of those 13.4 gigawatt that have already connection installed, some of them are not going to be constructed for various reasons, maybe for security of land or for environmental reasons or for whatever reason that might emerge, and this project will not be realized. So let's see an actual data from our project that Stelios mentioned, the 204 megawatt PV in central Greece. which is a project which is connected in high voltage. And we must say here that the TSO, which imposes the curtailment, there is no any plan how to impose it. So what they do when they have to decrease the power of the produced res, what they do, they go to the project that they will have the highest power per project, and then they go to the smaller projects. So they start with the projects that they are easier for them to curtail, which are the high voltage projects, which they can curtail them remotely. So they introduce a set point on the plant. With this might be a PV plant, a big PV plant, which is connected to the high voltage, or a wind plant, a wind power plant, a wind turbine, and wind plant. So they start from the high voltage project, and then they go to the medium voltage, especially to those projects that they have a separate line, and this line with which the project is connected to the grid does not have any consumption. So they go and then they just turn it down. I mean, the whole line. So the medium voltage projects are affected more heavily because they don't have a set point of decreasing the producing power, but they minimize it to zero. So this is what is happening right now. So the distribution of the curtailment is not fair, which means projects that they are connected to the high voltage are more heavily curtailed because it's easier for the TSO to curtail them, and the projects which are connected to the medium or to the low voltage, they might curtail not at all. So let's see what's happening to this project, which is a high voltage project, which is connected to the high voltage. The blue line shows the curtailment last year, the whole year. So it reached 5,000 megawatt hours, which was 1.3% of the produced power till June, July, and all year it was 1.6%. Last year, from September till the end of the year, we didn't have heavy curtailment, so it was a good half year because the system needed the production and could cope with the production of the green of the renewable project. But if you see this year's curtailments from January till July, you see, which is the orange line, you see that we already have year on year 13.7%, which is the curtailment of the production versus the budgeted production till July. So year on year we have already 13.7% curtailment, and if we normalize this to the production of the project all year, it will be 7.5%. Of course, this means that it will be 7.5% if there won't be any curtailment till the end of the year, which, as we saw before by the Professor Biskas presentation, this won't be the case. So if we translate this percentage to absolute number, and especially what was the income that was lost for till now for 2024, it was 1.5 million euros that this project has lost because of curtailment. And now, if we want to go to and finish my presentation with this, how an investor could mitigate this risk. Of course, there is something that is not affected, it's not influenced and affected by the investor, is the change in legislation. If the curtailment is being distributed more to more projects, then it will be less curtailment for bigger projects, and it will be more fair for everybody. And so this might be not a solution, but it will be it will ease the problem for the bigger project. And also there will be some we expect to have some legislation to be passed to compensate part of the curtailment depending on the reason why the curtailment is being imposed. The second means of mitigation of curtailment is the introduction of the meter storage, the standalone storage that has already been auctioned. It has been 700 megawatt, and we expect more to be auctioned or to be introduced without auctions, merchant to go merchant for the market. But we expect the first projects, the first standalone projects, to be in operation in early 2026. So we have another year, 2025, that the curtailment will be heavy because there won't be any mitigation, any storage to cope with the high curtailment. And the last is the introduction of storage behind the meter for the projects that already are in operation right now, which is a solution that currently is not, I would not say it's viable. It's a solution that because of the cost of the batteries, and if there is no subsidization, then the cost of the battery cannot cope with the minimization of the curtailment and the increase of the income because of moving the production from the curtailed hours to hours that is not curtailed. This cannot cope with the additional capex that is needed in order for the battery to be installed. With this, I conclude with my presentation. I pass the floor to Stelios, and I'm happy to, if you have to receive any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sotiris. And now we can move quickly to the Q&A questions. There are some interesting questions by the attendees. I will start with a couple of them for Professor Biskas. Dear Pandelis, you gave an overall figure for curtailments up to 2030 for renewable energy. And the question is whether there is, how it is going to affect solar and wind. Obviously, the two technologies don't have the same shares in these curtailments. A quick answer on that?
Yes, for sure. It will affect in a higher percentage the PVs and with a lower percentage the wind plants. We should expect that PVs will have a curtailment rate higher than 20%, whereas wind plants will have a curtailment rate of, let's say, 15 to 16%. I do not have the exact figure in front of me, but qualitatively, we should expect that PVs will have a severe curtailment higher than 20% based on the NECP provisions, of course. If something else is materialized, then we will have another picture.
And another question, whether in your simulations you have taken into account that electric vehicles can also offer storage capacity. Was that taken into account? This is, as far as I know, a very hot discussion in various countries, like the Netherlands, for example. We discussed it many times with our colleagues in Solarplaza, and the figures might be interesting, let's say.
We have done an extensive analysis for electrical vehicles and how they affect the power system. In our view, and based on very, I would say, optimistic electric vehicle penetration in the market, the effect is very small. So we have taken the projections of the previous NECP plan for hundreds of thousands of electrical vehicles operating in the streets and charging from the system. And even in this very optimistic scenario, which probably is not going to be realized, the effect was not significant. This is a very good suggestion from you. In the next conference that I will participate in, I will try to enlighten also this part of the simulation, how the electric vehicles and at which level they affect the power system.
So I take it as an indirect advertisement of the Solarplaza event in September. Thank you. A question for Stefanos. Stefanos, you mentioned that the Greek legislation does not practically foresee any compensations. And the question is, isn't that against European regulations?
Yeah, we have been discussing exactly the same point internally. I think, yeah, like it seems to me, yes, but I'm not really a lawyer. So it seems that the law says that there should be compensation when it's not market curtailment, right? We're not talking about market curtailment compensation when it's system curtailment and is not under control of the operator, of the owner. There should be compensation, but there's no clear mechanism for that. And obviously, the TSO wouldn't pay for that. So if someone would pay for that, would be the consumer. But so far, we haven't seen any compensation for that.
A question for Sotiris regarding the set points. It's a bit technical, but I guess it's interesting. Whether the set point directly, if the set point is directly at the inverter level of the Kozani project, or the set points are at the nodal level, that is, other plants can be affected as well. I'm saying that because you said you're targeted because you're a big project, but very close to you, you may have other plants, and just because you are there, other plants may be affected.
No, it's a line which connects the project with a substation at the plant, and then it's connected to the ultra high voltage substation of Kardia in Kozani, and it's independent line, so no other projects are affected. So it is solely being imposed to the specific plant. The plant, which is consisted of 18 smaller plants. Okay, so it's 18 different plants, but the whole plant, which is a common line which is connected to the ultra high voltage substation, is one line which is a sole line, independent line for these specific projects.
We have a question regarding the mix of renewables. The question is if there is a necessity for increase of the wind power 2030 target in order to mitigate part of the curtailments. How do you see that? I guess that both Pandelis and Stefanos can answer on that.
Yeah, I can start and maybe Pandelis can add more. So basically, wind will be less affected by curtailment, and we agree with that with Pandelis, which mentioned that before. However, the wind is more expensive. So we look at the L share of the wind is significantly more expensive, particularly in Greece. Therefore, it's more difficult of economic case for Greek market specifically. This is a completely different picture with Northern Europe, for example, like Nordics. And that's the advantage of the solar. So solar suffers more curtailment and has lower revenues per megawatt hour, but much cheaper. And wind is more expensive and more flat throughout the year when compared to solar. It doesn't have that characteristic shape that is causing curtailments.
Pandelis, do you have something to add on that?
Stefanos has described the situation as properly as, so I do not have something else to add on this.
Great.
I would like to add something.
Yeah.
I would like to add something on behalf of an investor. I think if we go to the national level, the answer is what has been said before by Stefanos and Pandelis. At the investors level, I think an investor might have a balanced portfolio, which should consist of wind and solar. Because the profile of production of the solar is different compared to the production profile of wind. as it has been mentioned, and it is obvious, I mean, the wind can produce all even in hours, and sometimes it's more in hours that the PV do not produce. So at the investors level, yes, the portfolio should be a balanced portfolio. On the other hand, what I'd like to add on what Stefanos said is, okay, let's say the hypothetical question that yes, let's increase the wind contribution of projects till 2030 in the NECIP. The question is, can wind projects be realized till 2030, when the maximum that they had in 1 year, it was 700 megawatt. And last year it was 500 megawatt. And if we see the historical additional wind power from 25 till today, it's more or less 200 megawatt. So if we go for a more wind, there are two issues. One is that the historical additional power cannot be realized for reasons, historical reasons, which might be financials and everything. And the second thing is, as again has been, the cost and the pain to develop a wind project is much higher, which means that the target will not be reached. So let's be practical and let's be realistic. So we understand what the wind people would like. They would like to have a number, but it's just a fantasy. It's not something that can be realized because of, and I'm talking as an investor because I see what's the IRR of a wind project right now and what's the IRR of a PV project, and the difficulties that I will have for a wind project and the difficulties I will have for a PV. But of course, at the investor level, it should be balanced, the portfolio. So this is from my side.
Just to give you an extra and fresh information on that for this year, up to now, we had 800 megawatt of PV connected to the grid this year, and unfortunately only 90 megawatt of wind. This is exactly what Sotiris said. Unfortunately, wind faces huge problems. And of course, this is part of the difficult equation that any ministry has to solve. The other is, as Professor Biskas has shown, we have already assigned final connection offers to certain projects. You cannot just delete it, at least without compensating these people. So we have to live with real issues and also to think beyond 2030. I mean, the world will not end in 2030. Now a last question, because we don't have much time. You mentioned Pandelis. This is a general question, though it's not for Pandelis, that merchant project should be given priority to proceed. And the question is, this means that the ministerial decisions about priorities should change again. It has changed 3 times. The market is not happy with that. Why should we go for another change?
You know that the merchant batteries are included in category B. Currently, I think that we have provided connection terms. The TSO has provided connection terms up to A8, something like this. So it's not very far from category B. I do not expect that we should change again the priorities. I think that the number one priority when these priorities were drafted would be to add analogically renewable, especially PVs and batteries in the system, and not to reach an extreme number of PVs before adding new batteries to the system. In all countries where I see and analyze, I see that there is an analogical and rational, let's say, penetration of PVs and batteries at the same time. In Greece, we have opted for large renewable penetration without storage, and we put storage in the second category, which is not correct from my perspective.
Okay.
I see that the rational thing to do would be to proceed with battery penetration before providing more connection terms to any other renewable project. This is,
But
from my perspective, the correct thing
thank
to
you,
do.
Pandelis. Unfortunately, we don't have any time, so I will give the floor to Franny. Thank you all for your participation. From my part, Franny, please.
Yes, indeed, looking at the time, we have to round off the webinar. But first, I want to thank Stelios for his excellent guidance this past hour and for trying to answer as many questions as we can. In case we have a couple of unanswered questions, we will look and find a way of how to answer them still. We will continue the conversation on curtailment in our event in Greece, in Athens on the 26th of September. So make sure to not miss it and register today if you want, or in the coming few days with the discount code that we share with you as a thank you for your attendance. So thank you very much and looking forward to meeting you all in Athens on the 26th of September. Have a great day. Bye bye.